In our last lesson, we encountered these ideas of human space exploration, moon, Mars, and beyond, right? And where we landed was with this idea of maybe whole societies traveling out to the stars, or maybe a nucleus of people, a small group of people who start a new society, which sounds just absolutely crazy. But I think it's important for us to think about historical examples of this, right? Think about the Pilgrims. That's like exactly what the Pilgrims did. They're like, hey, let's take the Johnsons, the Millers, and the Franklins and the Thomases. Let's all get on a boat. Let's go across this expansive ocean. And hey, we'll just start a new society. Your kids will marry my kids. They'll have kids. And we'll just kind of start our own new branch of human civilization, right? And like that's essentially what they did. Of course, they encountered humans already living there, right? Unexpectedly, perhaps, or maybe they were just like they knew it would be there. I don't know. Okay, so you get the point. This isn't like unheard of, but it is still pretty crazy. So what might motivate sending sort of colonists and a new settlement and society off into space, right? What might motivate something like that? Well, I think there's a couple examples that we see in the reading and otherwise. One is this idea of basically Earth is going to be destroyed, that's sort of inevitable somehow, right? We saw in the example of the Interstellar trailer that Earth is running out of food, right? The global population is just out of control. We can't support everyone with the resources we have on Earth. You hear a lot of that kind of talk today even, right? So we don't have enough resources for the people who are living here, so we have to go reach for the stars. Another possible way we could destroy the Earth, right, besides climate change, is maybe an obvious choice. But the reading points to this thing called the Doomsday Clock, which has been around since the 50s, which is just like a great name. Honestly, if you're going to come up with something, a Doomsday Clock is a great name for it. It's interesting. This is what the Doomsday Clock, actually, the site looks like, which is run by the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists, which points to where this originated, right? This corresponds to the creation of the atomic bomb. And this is a very real fear. It's less real for us today, but it's important to remember how real of a fear this was after the atomic bomb was first used, and then the associated buildup of atomic weapons. In fact, I need to show you a video. Don't let me forget. But let me just show you this real quick. As you scroll down, you'll see right now it says it's 3 minutes to midnight. And then it'll describe the clock, right? The idea is when it strikes midnight, the Earth is destroyed. And 3 minutes to midnight is pointing to global catastrophe with climate change and security. That's a big part of it, right? As you go back further down, it's through 3 minutes to midnight last year, 5 minutes to midnight. It was safer before. Part of that was some of the disarmament agreements, the reducing the nuclear stockpiles of weapons, which are staggeringly large. The amount of nuclear weapons in the world today is mind-boggling. It's just mind-boggling. We could destroy the world many times over if necessary. I don't think it's necessary, but if necessary, we could. As you scroll down, hey, it was 6 minutes to midnight, 5 minutes to midnight. Whoa, 2002, 7 minutes to midnight. 1998, 9 minutes. We were pretty safe in 1995, according to these folks. Wow, 1991, we were 17 minutes because the Cold War was over, right? So the Cold War, this is the buildup we talked about before. A huge part of that was building up these nuclear arsenals. Okay, I don't need to get into this. I think it's really kind of interesting and cool. Should I show you the video? I'll show you the video only because you've probably never seen it and you'll probably never check it out unless I show it to you. And it's pretty amazing. So this is it. A time-lapse movie, and it's really long, okay? But a time-lapse movie, oh man, I don't want that. All right. A time-lapse movie of every nuclear explosion since 1945, which was the first one. So these are all the nuclear tests that have happened over time. And they're visualized in a really nice way, which is why I wanted to show this to you. Okay, so what you'll see is here we are. There's a clock in the upper right, the month 5, 6, 7, 8, the year 1990, 1948, and you see the number 8 is the number of nuclear tests, and then the country is which countries have a nuclear weapon. Now, as you watch this, okay, there was nuclear weapon number 1, first test. Okay, and then the size of the explosion is an indicator of the strength of the bomb. Okay, and in the lower right, you can see the number 9. That's how many tests there have been total in 1950. Whoa! You see all those on the west? Oh no! Whoa! 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 Those were all nuclear tests, nuclear weapons that were exploded. Right? Whoa! 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 Okay. Now watch these numbers. We're in 1952. Now watch what happens when we get into the 60s. Now this should be blowing your mind right now. Great Britain has the bomb. We're still not even in the 60s yet. The US has exploded 196 nuclear weapons to test them. Now France has the bomb. It's testing it out in North Africa. Now let's skip ahead. You think, okay, well, this was the 60s. It must have died out, right? Look, here's the 70s. Every month, continual testing of nuclear weapons. Now, what are we doing? We know they work, right? We use them in World War II. We're building bigger and better ones. Okay? All right. I've talked about this enough. This is a really cool video. But the point is that there's some legitimacy to the fears about humanity's capabilities of destroying the Earth. So what are we going to do about it? Well, hey, we could send a group of people off to another planet to live and start a new civilization. To do that, we might want to send small groups of people first. And so what you see and we talked about this last time, but there are people who are very serious about this. As much as it feels like science fiction, there are people who are serious. And while governments talk about it, like there have been waves of interest among the US space program to send manned missions to Mars, there are also private organizations that are very serious about it and feel like it is the only way that the human species will survive is if, in fact, we leave the Earth. Mars One is one example of that, where they intend to sort of fundraise and do their own mission to Mars to set up a permanent colony there. They have done a variety of their own testing. I'm wondering if there's a gallery here. I don't think there is. There must be somewhere. But what they do is they actually will replicate their experiences in the desert. So they will test. Let's see if they'll do this. Yeah, here you go. So they'll actually live in these habitats in the desert for months and months and months. And people volunteer to do this, right? And are selected. They compete. And they do things like play GarageBand, right? Because that's what you would do if you were on Mars for the rest of your life. The point is that this is something that people feel very passionately about, and that they spend a lot of time, energy, and resources doing. And people commit months of their lives to doing this. In fact, when they live in these pods, they won't ever walk out of them unless they're wearing a full spacesuit kind of simulator. Now, when we try to envision what these societies in space might look like, I have a couple ways of doing that. One, well, you know what? Before I get to that, I think it's worthwhile for us to think about how we feel about this perception or idea that the only way the human species will survive is if we leave our planet. And I suspect, because I feel this, I feel this way. I suspect you might feel this way a little bit too, which is kind of like, you know what? Isn't Jesus going to come back before any of this stuff happens? Like, why are we worrying about the destruction of the earth? Because yes, we need to take care of the earth, right? We need to protect the people here. It's a part of our duty as Christians. But really, is humanity going to leave the earth, and like that's God's plan for us? And isn't Christ going to return here? And so this question I would raise to you is, do you think, is it possible that this exploration of space and even the colonization of space is a part of God's plan for humanity? Is that even a possibility? Is that biblical? Is it consistent with the Bible? And now I've grown up familiar with the Bible, read it much of my life, and been educated in Christian schools. And as far as I know, there's really nothing, the Bible doesn't speak to that, other than perhaps when Christ speaks of his imminent return, and he promises that he will return someday. That's always in reference to returning to Earth. It's hard to even conceptualize for the authors of scriptures. They wouldn't have even been thinking about that possibility of other places. But I'll put it this way. For the very first Christians, and we see this in Paul's letters, the very first Christians, those who maybe were living less than 50, 60 years after Christ, they believed that Christ's return was so imminent that some of them wouldn't even work, right? They would say, Paul writes to people and say, you should be working with your own hands and not relying on others, and the others in the church and their goodwill to provide for your needs, right? We should carry out our work and we should continue to go forward. And of course, as Christians over the centuries, we were not called to just sit on our hands and do nothing while we wait for Christ's return. We're called to continue to subdue the earth as we were commanded in Genesis, but also to spread his word and his love throughout the world. So to me, it doesn't mean we should just not consider the possibility. It's an interesting possibility, right? People could, again, going back to the Pilgrims could have been like, no, we're not going to leave. We have religious persecution here in Europe. We're not going to leave though because Christ will return before this gets out of hand or something like that. No, they still nonetheless decided to come to this country. So I don't think necessarily that we could say I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it. I personally would say it's pretty unlikely that God would just allow us to totally destroy the entire planet, and that our only hope and that his intention was that we leave this planet and go to others. It just seems inconsistent with the message of the Bible to me a little bit. But I do think this is all kind of in the domain of what God has created humans to be able to do. And so in that spirit, it's worth exploring these ideas. I guess that's where I'd land. I'm curious where you land on this, because I don't think there is one answer on that. I think it's an interesting question that's worth thinking about. Okay, so we saw Mars 1 and the vast importance of playing GarageBand while on Mars, apparently. But when I think about societies in space, where my brain goes to, when I think about what this could look like, I actually turn to the movie WALL-E. I don't know if you've seen WALL-E. It's a fun movie. It's a little boring for the Disney movies, but I just love WALL-E. He's like this little trash compactor robot who falls in love with this super awesome robot. But the whole point here is that in the backstory of what's happening in the movie WALL-E is that the Earth is covered in trash, right? This company, By and Large, which is like a Walmart on steroids, okay, has basically owns everything on the planet. They produce all this stuff. Humans have consumed it, and there's just trash everywhere. And so humans are By and Large, this company is like, well, hey, we'll clean up the Earth. You just go to space and relax while we clean up the Earth. And so WALL-E is left behind as a robot to be cleaning up the Earth, right? Meanwhile, the humans are out in space, and the secret behind the sauce is that By and Large has no intention of ever returning them because the Earth is completely destroyed. Okay? And what's really cool about the movie, though, is it has this. It imagines what a society might look like that's living on this spacecraft that's traveling through space. And so the spacecraft is called the Axiom, and WALL-E actually manages to make his way up to this spacecraft, which is pretty cool. And so what was really fun, though, is that when they made this movie, WALL-E, they also produced kind of commercials, fake commercials to go along with it. So this is actually a commercial for the Axiom. So you got to picture yourself in this alternate world where the Earth has been destroyed, and there's this mega corporation called By and Large, and they're like, hey, come live on our spaceship, and you can... All right, so this shows all the reasons you might want to live on their spaceship. So check it out. By and Large.
Since the beginning of time, humankind has looked up in wonder to the stars and dreamed of one day exploring distant galaxies. Finally, that day is here. By and Large is proud to announce the By and Large Exodus space program, the Axiom. The Axiom is a virtual city in space designed to accommodate the needs and desires of each of her 600,000 passengers. Let's take a look at some of the exciting features and programs that await you and your family.
Lodging.
The Axiom offers a vast array of living accommodations to suit you and your family's needs. Residents of the Axiom may choose from 3 elegant floor plans. Many feature unparalleled views of the greater solar system.
Transportation.
Welcome to the hover chair. Each hover chair provides a vibration-free transport experience at all times.
Axiom navigation system.
It is virtually impossible to be lost on the Axiom, as the hover chair always knows exactly where you are and where you'd like.
All right, so you get the idea of what this is communicating, right? So this spacecraft can hold 600,000 people, right? And this is your escape to space, and everything's lovely. You fly around in your chair. Well, in the movie, it shows what is it really like when Wally arrives. And now at this point, humans, as this group of humans on this spacecraft, have actually been on this ship for over 700 years. Okay, so many generations. So for these people, they've lived there their entire lives, and they don't know any different. And even though the mission was supposed to only, bring them back to Earth, in reality, it has no intention of doing so. So this is Wally arriving on the Axiom.
You virtual balls in space.
No, we did that yesterday. I don't want to do that.
Well, then what do you want to do?
I don't know. Something.
All right, so you notice a couple things. One, these people don't look like normal humans. That's because they've been sitting on these hover chairs for like 700 years, okay? And the other thing is that these two guys are talking to each other through their communications things, which is a little scary. Reminds us a little bit of what we're like sometimes when we're talking to each other through these. And they're like, what do you want to do? I don't know. What do you want to do?
Whoa.
Make a play, scream.
Oh, it doesn't sound.
Look, I'm tired of it.
If you can't fold the straws, you have to decide any good.
Now, if this feels to you like a commentary on our modern lives, I think it should.
Over here.
Oh, there's your drink.
Tunnel, tunnel. I'm in a tunnel. I can't hear you.
By and large, everything you need to be happy. Your day is very important to us.
A is for Axiom, your home sweet home. B is for by and large, your very best friend.
So this is super interesting for tons of reasons. One is it's really interesting to imagine what a society on a spacecraft might look like. And there's a lot of examples of that from movies and science fiction. But this is, I think, a really beautiful illustration of that in a funny way. The other is it points an interesting picture at commercial space travel. Like what happens when you pay a company to send you to Mars, and yet that company is also responsible for taking care of your every need during the trip. So every food item, every luxury perk. And you don't need to look very far. All you need to do is look at the airlines to see what this would be like in practice, right? You spend $500, whatever, on a ticket, and then you have to pay for, well, you get a free pop, you get free soda. But if you want, a sandwich, $8. You want movies, whatever. The point is, or you want to sit in the nicer seats, you got to pay a few $100s more. The point is that it's a little concerning to me. That's the part about commercial. It's one of the reasons that commercial space travel and some of the stuff is a little, gives me a little pause, I guess I would say. Now, again, this is in the science fiction domain, but again, it paints a picture. To make this a little more scientific, what I want to point to is, well, which one should I do? This one first. Okay, so this is actually a high school contest that's run, it's called the International Space Settlement Design Competition. All right, and in this case, students are actually asked to really think through the engineering and design of a space settlement, a spacecraft where, tens of thousands of people could live. So everything from what are you doing, where are people sleeping, how are you providing food, how are you managing waste, all those kinds of questions need to be addressed in these design documents. And so this website's great because it actually has the examples of people who have won. And it even, let me see if it has the examples here, overview, samples. So let me pull down one, and this truly is an international contest. Let's see, Edgewater High School in Orlando, Florida. You'll get a sense of how extensive these documents are. Again, this is a high school contest. All right. And what I particularly enjoy is scanning through for like the engineering design documents, right? So here you see some of these. Here's the solar panels, the industrial docking, residential, Taurus. Okay. Here's steel, regolith. Okay, so they've drawn out what are things going to weigh, how is it going to be constructed, how much is it going to cost, what are the operational requirements, how much raw materials are needed, how are people going to get around. All right, this is cool. They're going to use recumbent tricycles and rollerblades. All right, that's cool. All right, so you get an idea. Now this is of course just one of these design documents. If I just pull one more just for fun, this one's from high school in India. All right, so let's take a look at this one. These are like 60-page documents. All right. Okay, here's this design. Oh, that's interesting. It has like a sun shield. It rotates. Okay, so the point is that a scientific consideration of these sorts of things can be done. And in fact, even in a science fiction-y sort of way, there are artworks that can kind of pique our imaginations of what one of these settlements might look like, right? So I'm just searching here on space settlement design pictures. Many of them have a ring shape with the idea that if you rotated it, you could create some sort of artificial gravity, right? Since living in a weightless environment would be very difficult. But you can imagine the insanity of that, where you're playing baseball and then you look up and you see someone's house like up above you, right? It'd be kind of a crazy thing to imagine. All right, so we've considered here the possibility of why humanity might choose to leave Earth in large groups, and also what that might look like in reality. You know, reality in air quotes. All right, but hopefully this sparks your imagination, and as you read through the reading, I hope that these are helpful visuals. All right, cool. Well, I will see you next time.